Okay everyone, I'm back at it. It's about Saturday morning, a little bit before 8 o'clock. Gonna play some 1-3 at the Bellagio. Maybe I can get it in 12, 15 hours, something like that. Let's get right into it. Hope you guys enjoy. Okay folks, before we get into it, this in fact was a monster session. I recorded 76 hands in total, and no, we won't be discussing all 76, but more of the interesting ones of the session. And most of those didn't really occur until later in the evening, so you'll see some pretty large time gaps here, especially right up front. Alright, let's get right into it. Okay, this is the very first hand dealt to me of the session. I bought in for the $300 max, and here I'm in the cutoff position and look down at King 10 of hearts. Folds to me and I open the action for $12 with 3 red chips, expecting some change here in a bit, and 12 is my standard open in a 1-2 or 1-3 game. The small blind makes the call and the big blind gets out of the way. So we've got heads up action here to a flop, which is deuce 7 ace with 2 spades and no hearts. Well, not very ideal, that's for sure. The small blind checks, and occasionally when heads up, I'll take a stab at an ace high flop. So that's what I do here, and I'll put out a continuation bet of $15. He doesn't take too long and makes the call. Yeah, warning bells are definitely going off right now. Pretty good chance he's either got an ace or is on a spade draw. We're off to a turn, which is the ace of hearts. Now, given that second ace is out there, that means it's a little less likely he's got one in his hand, but he may in fact have one, as he now donk jams for $133. What the heck? Yeah, not staying around anyways. Only have king eye here, and I'll let this one go. Okay, this hand's over a couple of hours later. Nothing major happened in these first 2 hours. I did move seats and added on for $100, so I'm in this game for a total of $400. In this hand, I'm in the cutoff position again and look down at a nice one, pocket queens. Folds to me and I open the action for my standard $12, and the big blind is the only one that makes the call. Now, his range is going to be pretty wide here from this position, but can rule out any premiums, or we likely would have seen a 3-bet. We're heads up to a flop, which is deuce 6 queen with 2 diamonds. Yep, doesn't get much better than that. Big blind checks, and this is an interesting spot here with top set. There's a front door flush draw out there, so a case could be made to put in a c-bet, charge any draws, but outside of that, this board is pretty darn dry. I check and hope he catches up a bit, and the turn is the 3 of hearts. The big blind now leads for a whopping $8. Yeah, I think I want to raise this one up now. I gotta build this pot up just a little bit, so I bump this one up to $28. Takes him a long time to gather his chips, and he min raises to $56, and given that he doesn't have that much behind, maybe $40 or so, he's pretty darn pot committed and think he'll probably call a jam here. So that's what I do. I jam for $96 effective, and he snap calls. Now hopefully I'm not up against 4 or 5 here. Certainly a possibility given his position. And the river is the 5 of spades. Now, does he have a 4? I show my queens and he shows pocket 3s for set over set. That definitely works, and glad I checked the flop. Nice hand here. Okay, in this hand I'm in the cutoff position again and look down at ace-jack offsuit. The under the gun opens the action for $11, and usually when the under the gun opens with the raise, they could hold anything from mid to high pocket pairs to some suited broadways to the premiums, of course. Folds to me, and this is a very average hand here, and I make the call. Given his position, don't think I'd raise this one up unless this were suited, so I make the call and the remaining players fold, and we're heads up to a flop, which is ace-6 queen with 2 hearts. Okay, certainly possible he's got a better ace, but he could have a couple of kings here too. He puts out a pretty small c-bet of $10, and I think if he had an ace, he'd likely c-bet for a little bit more. Not going anywhere, of course, and I make the call. The turn is the 3 of clubs. Shouldn't really change much, but it does bring in a backdoor club draw. The under the gun now bets $40, nearly a pot-sized bet. Now, does he have 2 pair here with ace-queen, or maybe ace-6? Pretty unlikely ace-6 given his position, but maybe ace-x with the ace of clubs? He's surely showing some strength, but still can't go anywhere quite yet, and I make the call. A little bit worried about ace-king too. We're off to a river, which is the ace of clubs. Well, didn't expect that, but the backdoor club draw now comes in. He now checks, and pretty quickly too, which makes me think he certainly doesn't have clubs here. But he still could have ace-king and is scared of the flush, or he could have missed a hard draw. I think the thing to do here is check, so that's what I do. I show my trip aces, and they're good. The under the gun mucks, and I take this one down. That'll work. Okay, I am not in the cutoff position here. I'm in the big blind and look down at 4-9 offsuit. Yeah. Now you're probably wondering, how on earth is this going to be an interesting hand? Well, I guess interesting starting hands like this are pretty much going to come from this position only. Here are the MP limps, the button limps. The small blind decides he doesn't want to put in the extra $2 and lets it go, and I of course make the check here. Now given that we've got a couple of limpers, unlikely anyone's going to have anything significant here. We're off to a flop, which is deuce 8-3 with 2 clubs. Yes, this does not hit my hand whatsoever, but that 8-in club draw could have hit one of the limpers. I check, of course, the MP checks, and the button checks as well. Yeah, this one's feeling like a dud right now for sure. However, the turn is a good one, the 9 of hearts. Yep, top pair, pretty darn bad kicker, but definitely betting now in case if one of these folks is in fact on a draw, so I'll put in a nice little pot-sized bet of a whopping 10 bucks. The MP makes the call, which is good, and the button folds. Okay, so what does he have here? Possibly an 8 or maybe something like ace-3? The river? Yep, another good one, the 4 of hearts. Pretty unexpected 2-pair here, but what would he call now? He's obviously not going to call anything with the missed flush, but he could call any pair here, and of course if we see a raise, he's likely to have hit the wheel draw or have 5-6 and was continuing on the turn with a gutter. I think $25 sounds pretty good, not too expensive, so that's what I bet, and he thinks on this one for a solid 30 seconds. Yeah, not kidding, 30 seconds for a $25 bet, and he makes the call. I show my 2-pair and they're good. The MP mucks. Not too bad with 4-9 off. Okay, this is a few hands later. I'm back in the cutoff position and look down at King Jack offsuit. The under the gun limps, the MP limps, it folds to me, and generally when people limp in front of me and I want to raise it up, I'll add their limps to my standard opening raise. So here, given they're not showing much strength, I'll bump this one up to $18. The under the gun makes the call and the MP folds. A little bit out of turn, which is fine. Guess he really didn't like his hand after all. So we're heads up to a flop, which is ace-6 king with 2 diamonds. Okay, middle pair here, but that darn ace. The under the gun checks, and this is a pretty wet board, so I think you should check here more often than not, but I think I also want to try to take this thing down right now, so I put out a bet of $20. He doesn't take too long and makes the call. Dang it. Now, given that he didn't raise, I don't think he's got an ace here, though, as usually you should raise this one up in his position with the flush draw out there, but he could have a weak ace, though. The turn is the 9 of clubs. He checks again, and if he does have an ace, I think I want to keep this pot a bit on the smaller side, so I check as well. And we're off to a river, which is the ace of spades. Now, that's an interesting one. Given there are 2 aces out there on the board, unlikely he's got one in his hand. The flush draw also misses, and now he verbalizes a bet of $40, about half the pot. Now, does he have a king here, maybe? I call pretty quickly, hoping he has something like king 10 or king 9, and he quickly says 2-pair and shows king 9 of hearts. I show and take this one down with my jack kicker. Thank you, ace on the river. I was, in fact, beat here for sure on the turn until that second ace came out. And it's interesting, too. Sometimes when the board's paired, folks will announce 2-pair, and I think it might be kind of an angle. Their hand may have only paired with 1 card on the board, and when the board's paired, it's technically 2-pair, but some folks that really don't play that much might fall for it a bit, thinking their 2 cards in the hand didn't create 2-pair. I don't know, maybe not, but something I've always thought about, though. I think it's always best just to table your hand, though, if there's any doubt. Okay, this is a little while later. Was previously involved in a few uneventful pots where I folded on the turn. In this hand, I'm in the small blind position and look down at the best pre-flop hand in poker, pocket aces, and both of the red variety. The action folds to the button, who opens with the limp, obviously raising this one up, so I bump it up to $16. The button doesn't take too long and makes the call. Now, his range is going to be pretty darn wide on the button, especially as he limped too, so he could have anything from like 3-4 suited, low pocket pairs, or maybe some unsuited higher connectors. We're off to a flop, which is queen, king, jack with 2 clubs. Well, that board's not wet at all, but it definitely favors my range a little bit more than his, so I put out a continuation bet of $20. He thinks on this one for a bit and puts in a min raise to $40. Man, I tell you, I see a lot of min raises here in low stakes. Pretty rare to see a 3x raise, even with a pretty nutted hand or a strong draw. So the fact that he min raised doesn't necessarily mean he's not super nutted, but here, I think my hand is just too strong to fold, plus getting really good price, so I make the call. The turn is the king of hearts. I check, and now the button jams for his remaining stack of $113. Man, does he have a king here? Maybe ace 10, but I've got an ace blocker, so a little less likely. Does he have like 9-10? I think on this one for a while and decide to throw in a crying call. And the river's the 4 of clubs, and he turns over 9-10 of spades. Gosh dang it. Well, guess I got too attached to my aces here. That's a bummer. Okay, this is a rotation later. I'm back in the small blind and look down at ace-queen offsuit. The end of the gun opens with the min raise of $6. It folds to the button, who makes the call, and yep, a raise is in order, so I make it a total of $26. The end of the gun makes the call, and the button folds. Well, unlikely he's got any premiums here, and we're off to a flop, which is queen, king, deuce, rainbow. All right, middle pair here, and I think either a check or a bet is fine. This guy's a pretty weak player, and I think he'd call pretty much anything, so given that, I put out a C bet of $25, and he quickly makes the call. Okay, does he have a king here? Could he be on a draw? The turn is the jack of spades, and this now brings in a gutter draw for me. I think I want to continue here and apply some pressure, and I think about a half pot bet sounds about right, so I continue with a bet of $55, and this is where it gets a bit interesting. He decides on a call, but puts out stacks of 10 to count all his chips. Yeah, definitely showing his inexperience, and that's okay. Seems like he's here to have a good time, and absolutely nothing wrong with that. We're off to a river, which is the ace of clubs. All right, upgraded to 2 pair here. Pot's a little over $200, and yeah, unless he's got a 10, a jam is definitely the play, so that's what I do. I push out my whole stack, which is about $162, and he thinks on this for a bit, checks his cards, which is good, tells me he doesn't have a 10, and lets it go, and I take this one down. That'll work. Thank you, kind sir. Okay, this hand's about 45 minutes later. Here I'm on the button and look down at a nice one, ace queen of diamonds. Folds to me and I open the action for my standard $12, and the big blind is the only one that wants to play. We're heads up to a flop, which is jack 3-7 with 2 clubs. Well, just to have a couple of overs here. Big blind checks, and I think either a check or a bet is fine here with my 2 overs, but I think this flop's going to hit his range a tad better than mine, so I make the check. The turn is a nice one, though, the ace of spades. He checks again, and yep, time to start building this pot up a bit, so I put out a bet of $15. Probably could make this bet a little bit higher, but this is the route I chose here, and he makes a pretty quick call. So is he on a club draw maybe, or possibly connected with a jack or 7 and check the turn because he's scared of the ace? I don't know, maybe? The river's the 9 of hearts. Shouldn't really change much unless he was on a gutter draw with like 10-8, but he donk leads now for $20. Not really a big bet here on the river. Is this almost like a blocker bet? I think if he had 2 pair or better, we'd probably see a bit bigger of a bet than that. I'm a bit confused here, and I make the call. The big blind shows king jack offsuit. I show my hand, and I'm good. Dang, probably should have raised there on the river, but would he have called? I don't know, maybe? Okay, folks, this hand had a very interesting and embarrassing finish to it. Was really struggling whether or not to include it in the video. And even though I've been playing poker for over 2 decades now, yep, still embarrass myself from time to time, I guess. Here I'm in the big blind and look down at 5-6 offsuit. Yep, really only going to play this one if it limps to me, and that's what happens. The cutoff and button limp. Small blind completes, and I make the check here. No reason to do anything other than that. We're 4 ways to a flop, which is 9-3 king rainbow. Yes. Now, how does this connect with my hand? Not one bit. Not right now, at least. Small blind checks. I check, of course, and both the cutoff and button players check as well. Okay, unlikely anyone's got a king here. The turn is the 7 of clubs, which brings in a double gutter draw. The small blind now leads for a whopping $5. Yeah, sticking around now with my 6 outs. Don't think a club would count as an out here, so I make the call, and both the cutoff and button call as well. Still a pretty small pot of just over $30. The river's a good one, the 4 of spades. Heck yeah, the nuts. Totally unexpected. Small blind checks, and yep, obviously putting some money in here, but what would everyone call? Maybe a half pot bet of 15 or so? Well, that's what I decide and put in $15. The cutoff thinks for a second or two and makes the call, and the button instantly calls. And here's where I blunder a bit. I completely forget the small blind's in the hand, and I table my 5-6, and the dealer quickly says the small blind still has to act, and I'm like, oh no. And I quickly cover my cards and pull them back, like if that's really going to do anything. Small blind folds, of course, and I push my cards back into the middle, and the cutoff and button mug. Pretty darn embarrassing here, and maybe got a bit too excited with the hand, but that's okay. Glad to take it down. Okay, this hand's almost an hour and a half later. Got a few new folks at the table and have pretty much forgotten about my embarrassment at this point. Here I'm back in the big blind and look down at 8-9 offsuit. The MP limps, the hijack raises to $15, the cutoff calls the 15, I make the call with my connector, and the MP calls as well. Okay, so the hijack is obviously going to be the strongest here. Could have anything from suited connectors, high pocket pairs to the premiums. Cutoff and MP shouldn't be as strong, nor should I as well given my position. We're 4 ways to a flop, which is 3-9-7 with 2 hearts. Well, that works. I check to the pre-flop aggressor, the MP checks as well, and the hijack puts out a bet of $25. The cutoff folds, and given there are 2 hearts out there, this is a raise nearly 100% of the time, but the hijack wasn't tested pre-flop and still could have anything from pocket 10s through aces, so I make the call and the MP folds, and we're heads up to a turn, which is the 10 of hearts. Well, shoot, that brings in the front door flush and, of course, an overcard. I check again, and the hijack checks as well, so no way he's got a flush here. Would have for sure put out a bet, but still could have an overpair. The river's the 10 of clubs. I check again and he puts out a pretty small bet of $25. Now that's less than a quarter of the pot, so what am I beating here? Ace king, ace queen? He shouldn't have pocket eights as I've got a blocker in my hand. I don't think he'd continue on the flop with pocket sixes and below or even raise pre-flop with those hands, but possible. Really only got a bluff catcher here and this is a pretty good price and I've got to be right, like 20% of the time or so for this call to be profitable, so I make the call. The hijack shows pocket jacks. Dang it. Well, bit of a waste of money here at the end, but at least I gained some information on this guy. Okay, folks, another very interesting situation happens here, but in this case, it was another guy who either didn't realize it was in the hand or thought I checked. Here, this is about 30 minutes after the previous hand and about 2 hours after my embarrassing situation from earlier. Here, I'm under the gun and look down at king, queen offsuit. Not my favorite hand to open from this position, but I open it up nonetheless for my standard 12 bucks. Folds to the hijack who makes the call and the big blind calls as well. Or three ways to a flop, which is king 3-3 with 2 diamonds. Big blind checks and I don't have a diamond in my hand, but with my top pair, pretty darn good kicker. I think a bet is okay here. Want to charge any draws as well, but as I put out a bet of $20, the hijack puts out a bet of $30 at the same time, and the dealer says stop, points to my bet and says he has to raise to 40. And the hijack asks if he can instead call the 20. The dealer says no, but calls the floor, and the floor guy comes over. The dealer explains the situation, and the floor guy says that the hijack does in fact have to raise to 40, so that's what he does. He puts out the extra chips. Big blind folds, and this just keeps getting more interesting. I don't know what the right thing to do here is. Now he asked to just call, which makes me think he doesn't have a 3. If he was okay with the raise, for sure he'd have a 3 here with like ace 3 suited or something. And given that information, I put out 2 extra black chips to put them all in for about $180 effective. And he thinks on this for a solid minute and lets it go. Now I'm thinking that may not have been the right thing for me to do, but it wasn't my fault that he either thought I checked or didn't see I was in the hand. I don't know. I'm kind of torn on this one. What do you guys think? Should I have just called out of courtesy? I really am torn on this one. Okay, this hand's about 20 minutes later. Here I'm in the small blind and look down at king 9 of spades. The under the gun limps, the hijack limps, the cutoff limps, the button puts in a min raise to $6. Yes, this table has turned fun. With all this dead money in there, I should raise this one up for sure, but I make the call instead. Same with the big blind, under the gun, hijack, and cutoff. Jeez. So we've got pretty significant multi-way action to a flop, which doesn't get much better. Jack 4 ace with 2 spades. That will definitely work. I check, hoping that someone bets so I can raise this one up, but it checks all the way to the button lady who puts in a bet of $10. Yep, that will work. Raise, here we come. So I bump this thing up to $30. It folds back around to the button and she makes the call. Now she doesn't have that much behind, maybe something like $80 or so. The turn doesn't get much better, the deuce of spades. Now trying to figure out how to get all of her money into this thing. So I put out a bet of $40, what I think is about half her stack. She takes a look at her cards and I'm thinking she's about to fold, but nope, she makes the call. All right. The river is an inconsequential 8 of hearts. I asked that she move her arms a bit so I can see how much she has, and it's right at $30, so that's what I bet. I put out bet of 30. And she makes a pretty quick call here, slowly putting in her chips, including the white ones. I turn over the nuts and she says an explicitive or two and mucks. Thank you, deuce of spades. Okay, it's now right at 5 o'clock. Been playing for a solid 9 hours. In this hand, I'm in the big blind and look down at queen 9 offsuit. Again, another one I really wouldn't play unless limp to myself, and that's what happens. The under the gun and button limp, the small blind completes, and I make the check here. So we've got 4-way action to a flop, which is jack 9-6 rainbow. The small blind checks, I check with my middle pair, and the under the gun, who seems to be enjoying his food at the table, makes a bet of $12. The button makes the call, small blind folds, and I think the only thing to do here is make the call, and that's what I do. At this point, I'm thinking the under the gun could have something like ace jack or king jack or possibly pocket tens, but I don't know that he'd limp pre-flop with pocket tens. Certainly possible though. The turn is the 10 of spades, so that pretty much means it's unlikely he's got pocket tens now, but it does give me an open ender here. I check to the post-flop aggressor and he now puts out a bet of $20. Yeah, pretty certain he's got a jack here. The button gets out of the way, and again I think a call is in order with my draw. We're off to a river, which is a good one, the king of hearts. Okay. Now given that he limped pre-flop and his action so far post-flop, just not seeing that he's got ace queen here, I think I'm in pretty good shape. Don't want to check here now and risk this getting checked through, so a bet is certainly warranted, and I make this one $50. He takes a look at his cards and says a nice bet and lets it go, and I take this one down. That'll work. Okay, this is about an hour later. Been playing for more than 10 hours at this point. Here I'm in the middle position seat and look down at a good one, pocket jacks. There's a $6 under the gun straddle on and I open the action for 20 bucks. Pulls the button who raises to $65. Don't see too many 3-bets here, and this guy's been very tight all session so far. So I'm thinking there's no question he's got aces, kings, or ace king here, but jacks are just a little bit too good to fold right now, so I make the call. We're heads up to a flop, open for a jack, and the flop is ace deuce 5 with 2 spades. Well, that's not going to work. I check, and now he does something interesting with his chips and not quite sure what to make of it. He puts them in several stacks of 15 or 20 and then combines them and then puts more on. Not really sure, but he ends up betting $50 here, and I don't know if this was for show or what. And now while I'm thinking, he then starts to fiddle with his chips, doing the chip shuffle, then throws a couple dollar chips on his cards and then starts spinning a chip. Now, is he nervous here? Is he pretty confident? Hard to really tell, but a bit confused by his actions, and I'll let this one go. Not really worth it here. Okay, in this hand, there's a $6 under the gun straddle on. I'm in the big blind and look down at a premium ace-king offsuit. The action folds the button who opens for $20. The small blind makes the call, and yep, perfect spot for a squeeze, so I announce a raise and put in a black chip. The straddler gets out of the way, and the button looks like he wants to raise this one up again. Takes a handful of black chips and announces all in. Oh boy. The small blind gets out of the way, and I throw in a black chip for the call. We run it once. I show my hand, and the button shows pocket queens. Holy smokes, we've got a classic coin flip situation here. The flop is ace 7-6 rainbow. Heck yeah. The turn is the 6 of hearts. Come on, no queen. And the river is the 7 of spades. Yes, sir. I will take that. Dodged a bullet here for sure, and I double up. That will work. Okay, in this hand, I'm in the hijack position and look down at pocket nines. There's no straddle on, and the low jack opens the action for 10 bucks. Yeah, nines are pretty tough to play, but definitely a 3-bet here for sure, so I bump this one up to 30 bucks. Folds the big blind who makes the call. Okay, that's odd, and the low jack folds. Okay, that is also odd. All right, so unlikely any premiums here from this guy, and we're off to a flop, which is jack 6-10 with 2 diamonds. Yeah, not very ideal, but at least I'm in position. That's pretty much all I've got going. He checks, and I think a check is in order as well. I want to keep this pot as small as I can right now. The turn is the 8 of clubs. Well, that's not too bad. He checks again, and it seems like he doesn't want a piece of this thing, and I think a bet here with my open ender might do the trick, so I put out a bet of $35, about half the pot. He doesn't take too long and lets it go, and I take this one down. Works for me. Okay, before we get into this hand, you may be wondering why my stack is a little bit lower. Well, I didn't get a hand on video, but I lost about $400 in a pot with the nut straight versus a pretty weak flop flush, so got handicapped a bit here before this next hand. Here I'm on the button and look down at another premium ace-king offsuit. The hijack limps, the cutoff limps, and yep, raising this one up, so I throw out 4 red chips for a raise to $20. Folds back to the hijack who calls, and the cutoff calls as well. So we've got 3-way action here to a flop, which is 8-7-10 rainbow. Now this is likely going to hit their range a little bit more than mine. The hijack checks and the cutoff now donk leads for $25. Man, does he have something like jack 10, queen 10, or maybe jack 9 suited? I float with my 2 overs, not ready to fold quite yet, and the hijack lets it go. The turn is the 6 of diamonds, so any 9 gets there now, and that opens the door for a backdoor diamond draw. Now the cutoff checks, which is interesting. Something's telling me he actually nailed this thing though, so I check as well. The river's the 4 of diamonds, so that completes the backdoor flush. He now leads for $50. Yeah, obviously not sticking around with my ace high, and I'll let this one go. Too bad, but that's alright. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have now hit the 8 p.m. mark and been playing for a solid 12 hours. In this hand, I'm back in the big blind and look down at 5-6 offsuit. Yep, same hand in position as earlier in the session. The under the gun and cutoff both limp. The small blind completes, and I, of course, make the check here. So we're 4 ways to a flop, which doesn't get much better. 5-8-5 with 2 diamonds. That will work. Small blind checks. I check, hoping someone connected with those diamonds or an 8, looking for a raise opportunity. And the under the gun doesn't let me down and puts out a bet of $15. Cutoff gets out of the way, small blind makes the call, and yep, raise, here we come. So what's the right sizing here? Want to charge any draws, of course. 15 times 3 is 45, plus the other 15 that was put in the pot, so that makes a total of $60. And that's what I raised to. However, the under the gun and small blind couldn't fold quick enough. Maybe should I have raised a bit lower, but I don't know. Still happy to take this one down. So this has been a long session so far. I'm down about $100. Still trying to claw my way back to a good session. In this hand, I'm in the hijack position and look down at ace-king offsuit. Yet again, I am not complaining. Low jack limps with 3 white chips, and I raise this one up with 3 red chips. Both the blinds make the call, and the low jack calls as well. So we're 4 ways to a flop, which is 9 queen 10 rainbow. Okay. Now this is likely going to smash their ranges, so I need to proceed with caution. The action checks to me, and yeah, just like before, I want to keep the pot relatively small, so I make the check, hoping a jack makes an appearance. The turn is not a jack, it is the 6 of clubs. The board keeps getting wetter and wetter, I tell ya. Blinds check again, and now the low jack puts out a bet of $20. Yeah, this isn't that much, but I think on this one for a bit, and I make the call here, which I think is a bit of a mistake. Small blind makes the call as well, and the big blind folds. Now, unless I hit a non-club jack, I'm pretty much done with this thing. And the river is the 7 of hearts. Well, alright, another miss here with ace king, kinda stinks. Small blind checks, and the low jack now puts out a bet of $75. Pretty quick and easy fold here, so that's what I do. Small blind thinks on this for a bit and folds as well, and the low jack takes this one down. Okay, here this is a few rotations later. I'm back in the hijack position and look down at ace jack offsuit. Low jack to my right opens for $15, and this is a good opportunity for a raise, but this guy's been playing pretty straight up so far, and I make the call. Folds to the lady in the big blind, and she calls as well. Now, the low jack's range is going to be the best here for sure, so need to be mindful of that. The big blind's range is going to be pretty wide. And we're off to a flop, which is deuce 3 ace with 2 hearts. Well, I pretty much smashed that. Big blind checks, and the low jack puts out a bet of $20. Yep, think I've got to raise this one up with my top pair and backdoor nut flush draw. But this time I decide to size down a bit and put in a raise to $55. Big blind doesn't want any of that, and the low jack folds as well. That'll work. Pretty quick and easy hand here. Okay, folks, we're now about 13 and a half hours into this session, and this is the turning point for sure. Kind of crazy it takes this long, but here we go. In this hand, I'm under the gun and look down at a nice one, ace queen of spades. I open for my standard $12. Low jack makes the call, and it folds around to the big blind, who makes the call as well. So right now, I'm thinking both could have some low to middling pocket pairs to some suited connectors. We're off to a flop, which is 6 jack 5 with 2 spades. That works. Big blind checks, and yeah, I think I want to start building this thing up in case the spades come through, so I put out a bet of $20. Low jack quickly gets out of the way, and the big blind makes the call. So could he have a jack here? Possible, but could also have something like 7-8. The turn is the 10 of clubs. Okay, so now I've upgraded to a gutter to the nut straight. Big blind checks, and I think either a check or a bet is fine here. If a blank comes on the river, really only have ace high, so I make the check looking for some help, and it in fact does come with the king of clubs on the river. Yes, sir, the nuts. He checks again, and what would he call here? The pot's $77. Would he call 30? Is that too much? I don't know, but that's the route I go. I put out a bet of $30, and he thinks on this one for a while. A solid 2 minutes, and he lets it go. And I take this one down. That'll work. Okay, folks, this is the very next hand. Here I'm in the big blind position and look down at 7-4 offsuit. Yeah, as you'd probably expect, the MP limps, cutoff limps, the small blind completes, and I make the check, of course. So we're 4 ways to a flop, which is 8-9-4 with 2 hearts. All right, bottom pair, I got a piece of this thing. Small blind now leads for $10. Yeah, not going anywhere quite yet with my bottom pair, so I make the call. The MP calls and the cutoff calls as well. Okay, given everyone limped pre-flopped and called post-flop, I think it's likely that most everyone is connected with this thing given the board. You know, maybe like 10 jack or ace 9 or queen 8 suited, something like that. The turn is an interesting one, the 7 of spades, so I upgrade here to bottom 2. Small blind leads again, and this time for $40. I mean, he's showing some significant strength here, betting into 3 other folks. Still can't go quite anywhere yet, and I make the call. The MP folds, and the cutoff calls as well. What on earth? I'm thinking one of them, if not both, may have 2 pair plus here, so need to proceed with caution. But the river is a nice one, the 7 of hearts. That completes the front door flush too, but upgrades my bottom pair on the flop to a nice little boat here on the river. Small blind checks now, so does he have a straight and is afraid of the flush? Possible, or maybe still 2 pair. Now, unless someone's got pocket 8s or 9s and limp with those pre-flop, I'm going to be pretty good, and no, I'm not worried about a straight flush here. If they've got it, then they've got it, so I put out a nice little bet of $100. The cutoff thinks on this for a bit and lets it go, and the small blind thinks on this for a while, has my chips counted out, then thinks some more, and he makes the call with the $100 black chip. I show my boat, and it's good. The small blind mucks. Turnaround is officially here, folks. Okay, this is a little bit later. Here I'm in the hijack position and look down at yet another premium pocket aces. The under the gun limps, the low jack raises to $20. All right, finally a good opportunity for a 3-bet, so I bump this one up to $65. The under the gun folds and the low jack makes a pretty slow call. Thinking queens through 9s maybe or something. We're off to a flop, which doesn't get much better. Ace, queen, 7 rainbow. Yep, pretty much smashed this thing. Low jack checks, and with a pot of 137, I'm really hoping he's got pocket queens here, so I put out a bet of $100. And he thinks on this one for a while and decides to jam for $483 effective. I snap call, as anyone would, of course, and immediately show my top set. He's like, oh man, the turn is the deuce of hearts and the river is the three of clubs. He mucks and I take this one down. He said after the hand that he had ace king, and boy howdy, what a flop. Nice little double up here again. Okay, folks, we've now reached the 14-hour mark. Here I'm in the big blind and look down at 8-10 of hearts. The under the gun limps, which seems to be a common occurrence. The MP limps, the hijack limps, the small blind completes, and I'm in an interesting spot here. I think a case could be made to raise this one up, given all the dead money in the pot, but I like to check here and push my chips into the middle. So we've got 5-way action to a flop, which is a good one. 6 deuce queen, all hearts. Well, that definitely works. Small blind checks and 100% chance of putting some money in here, so I'll put out a bet of $10. The under the gun doesn't want any of that action and folds. The MP makes the call, the hijack calls, and the small blind folds. Okay, we've got 2 field callers here, and we're off to a turn, which is the ace of clubs. Well, hopefully that doesn't kill the action, but got to keep my foot on the gas here, and I'll put out a bet of $25, a little over half the pot. The MP continues with the call, and the hijack folds. Now, what would he be calling with? I don't think he'd limp with ace jack or ace king of hearts, but nothing's out of the realm of possibility, though, at these stakes. He could also be calling with a single heart with maybe the ace or king, so maybe like ace 6 offsuit with the ace of hearts, or maybe he limped with like ace 7 of hearts. That wouldn't be good. We're off to a river, which is the deuce of spades. Shouldn't really change much unless he's got pocket sixes here, and there's really only 3 combos of that available. I decided to continue here and bet for value with a bet of $50. He doesn't take too long and calls with the black chip. I show my flopped flush, and he shows ace 8 offsuit with the ace of hearts. Man, that was a close one, but yet another one taken down. A good streak here continues towards the end of this session. That'll work. Okay, this is just over a full rotation later. Here we're 6-handed. I'm under the gun and look down at queen jack of clubs. All right, 40% of the way to a royal, so I open the action for my standard 12. Folds all the way around to the button who makes the call, and both the blinds call as well. All right, feeling pretty good about this one. We're off to a flop, which is ace 5 with 2 clubs. Blinds check to me, and with those 2 clubs out there, I think I want to start building this thing up a bit in the event a club comes. Not overly worried about the aces, as 2 of them are accounted for on the board, so I put out a bet of $25. The button folds and the small blind jams for her remaining stack of $38. Big blind gets out of the way, and of course this is a call, so I throw in the extra $13. I say I'm on a draw and show my queen jack. The turn is the 10 of spades. Okay, come on, club or king. And the river is the 3 of diamonds. She shows ace deuce offsuit. Well, shoot, can't win them all, but good for her. Okay, this is a few hands later, and we're nearly 14.5 hours into this session, starting not to see straight. Here I'm on the button and look down at ace 10 offsuit. The MP opens the action for $15. Folds to the cutoff who makes the call, and I think a case could be made to raise this one up, but I'm in the best seat at the table and elect to call this relatively weak hand, and the blinds fold out. So we're 3 ways to a flop, which is 5, 8, 9 rainbow. The MP continues with a bet of $20. The cutoff makes the call, and here another interesting thing happens. I think the dealer forgot I was in the hand and starts to pull the chips into the middle. I throw out my $20 call with my 2 overs and backdoor possibilities, and she fortunately sees this before the turn comes out and takes my chips as well. We're off to a turn, which is the 7 of hearts. Okay, upgraded to an open ender here. The MP now checks, but the cutoff wants to keep putting chips in the pot and puts out a bet of $50. Now, at the time, I'm thinking it's a bet of $40 and attempting to run the math in my head, and I'm calculating implied odds of about 17% or so, which gives me the odds to call with 8 outs, or so I think, and I make the call. However, it's actually a bet of 50, and there were a couple of hearts out there, so I really didn't have 8 outs, more like 6. The dealer asked me to put out the additional 10, and I do, which doesn't give me the odds at all, and the MP folds out. The river's the 3 of clubs, a pretty big blank. The cutoff now verbalizes a bet of $100, and I couldn't fold fast enough here. Man, should probably think about ending this session pretty soon, but pretty determined to make that 15-hour mark. Okay, this hand's a couple of rotations later. Here I'm in the big blind and look down at king-queen offsuit. Folds to the button who opens with the limp, and this guy was pretty darn new to the game, so I'm definitely looking to play against this guy. Small blind completes, and a raise is for sure in order, and I raise this one up to $20. The button makes the call, and small blind folds, so we're heads up to a flop, which is 8-3 ace with 2 hearts. Well, that won't work, but I'm wondering if I can scare him off with that ace out there, so I size up a bit here and put out a bet of $30. He doesn't take too long and makes the call. Well, shoot. Need to get pretty lucky here from here on out. The turn is the 6 of spades. Doesn't really change anything. I check and pretty much give up, and the button checks as well. Now what could he have here? An 8 maybe? Or maybe a hard draw? The river's the 9 of diamonds, so the draw misses. I check again, and he checks as well, and he shows jack 9 of hearts. Oh man, he gets there on the river. I show my king queen, and I don't know why. Maybe because I'm about to leave, but man, Tough to lose against this dude. That's alright though, it happens. Okay, folks, this is the 76th and last recorded hand of the session. I'm close to 15 hours in. Here I'm in the middle position seat and look down at pocket queens. All right. There's a $6 under the gun straddle on to my right, and I open with a bet of $20, and the whole table folds. Oh, man, that's all right. Well, I stuck around for another 15 minutes or so, didn't get any recordable hands during that time, but overall this was yet another monster 15-hour session. Started at 8 a.m. and left at about 11 p.m. Was in for 400 and out for 912 for a total profit of $512. Well, everyone, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and have a good one.